Okay, here we go. This is the roasting cycle for a homemade roaster. This is a fluid bed roasting machine, and if you look, the black box here at the bottom here is where all the beans are held. There's a screen on the stool to keep the beans in the chamber, and I have exhaust vents that you can see coming from the black box all the way up to the ceiling. I'll try and get that so you can see how that all works out there. See, and that goes into the ceiling there. So the black box, the chamber there on the right, and then we have a treble light, and that will be explained when I have the sight glass that goes in between that pipe and the chamber box. On the left side is the control box, and that has a fan and a heating element and then another fan, and all of those will be put into use at a certain time, and then there's a key on the far left there that locks it so nobody can use it without that key. I'm going to go ahead and start the roasting here, and hopefully you'll see how everything works here. It gets a little loud. I'm going to put in some earplugs, and I've already weighed out some coffee. You want to put in about 9.5 pounds of green beans, and I've already weighed that out on the scale. So let's get to work and roast some coffee. Pre-measured beans. That's the fan for the chamber. There's another button right here. The light goes on. That's the exhaust fan that goes up towards the ceiling. We're going to empty the green beans inside the roaster chamber. Now what I do now is I scoop out beans until the beans start to perk up. And what I'm doing here is cleaning the beans out. There's always kind of a little bit of crap in there. Now normally I don't stand this way, I stand there. But since I'm showing this, I thought I'd go ahead and shot here. Okay, now I've got the beans going up. Now this button right here is the heating element. Here's the heat probe. And that comes in like that. The sight glass. This is going to go in between here, and when it's up and ready to go, I'll put that in there, but not until then. So I'm going to move the camera over so you can kind of see what's kind of happening here. I hope I don't waver it too much. You can see the temperature there and the beans. We're going to get up to 440, 50 degrees here, so we got quite a ways to go. Now you see the beans are starting to pop, so I'll set that down. This is what I do. them all in at once and turn on the fan and the heat. They're too heavy. So this is why I add. And you always want to make sure you have a constant airflow through the bottom or you'll burn the element. So as this heats up, and we're already in the 120, you add the beans. Hope I'm doing okay on that. Let's get a look and see how the beans look. You get an idea of what's happening with those beans. See that? And then there's the temperature. See how those beans are starting to hit? Now I'm sitting at a pretty good temperature here, 215, 220. Normally I would put this sight glass in there earlier, but I wanted you to see what the effect was. Now right here, this is the chaff that's coming off of the bean as it heats up. So I'm going to put this chamber in, and what's going to happen with this chamber glass is it's going to suck up all the chaff and draw air from the roasting chamber at a much better volume here. Now this is where we get a little technical, because what we want to do here is get the chaff away from the beans. And as the beans warm up, they get lighter, they suspend more in the chamber, and that's why you have the screen. The chaff comes out, and the chaff comes out at certain degrees depending upon the temperature of the bean. So, depending on the bean, you're going to get a chaff release. I'm roasting right now some Costa Rican coffee. We're at 276. And you see what I do here? Is I'm turning this screen. And what that does is it allows the chaff to come up into the bottom here. And I'll show you what's happening when I do that. So here we go. Kind of excuse the waywardness of the machine, of my camera here. You can see what I do here. So needless to say, a lot of hands-on roasting here as compared to other machines where you have to push a button and it tumbles. But I like this because it roasts good coffee. This isn't a machine that you can buy on the market, by the way. This is kind of a homemade machine. So it's all electric, runs on a 55 amp, 220 single phase unit, and it is loud. Let me pull that out a bit so you can see. What's the temp? We're at 322 right now. We've got 120 something degrees yet to go, and it's 5 to 2 according to that clock. In about 10 minutes we'll be done. Easy. That's how fast it cruises. I'm going to set this down and watch my beans here for a bit. I think you got an idea of how that works, right? Good. I'm going to move it over here. I guess the big thing here would be the temperature setting. If you can see it. I'm going to bring it up again and just let you see what's happening here. Sorry about all the wonkiness of this. So there we are. See how that's cruising? 355, 357. This is what the beans look like at that point. So I'm sorry about all the wavering of the camera. Now I have a sight box right here, and that is to put light into the chamber. Otherwise, I couldn't see what I'm doing. So that's really important. Now we're getting up in the 370s, and depending on the type of coffee, I'm going to get a blow of chaff here, in about 10 degrees here, where the first crackle has happened, and now the beans are starting to release all their moisture, the chaff is coming out, and I'm hitting the temperature threshold here where soon there'll be a minimum of chaff coming out of the bean, and I'm going to be getting into the coffee bean roasting temperature threshold here, and then it's a matter of how dark I want the coffee. There is a minimum for the coffee bean to achieve a coffee bean status. That's really different machine. The common temperature range here is about 425 for that coffee seed to become a bean. That's the easy way to explain it. Because we can get really, really technical when it comes to coffee. But ultimately, the consumer wants a bean that tastes good and consistent. That's what they're looking for. You can see, I can show you here. Let's shoot one more time. We're at 402. So you can see inside the chamber there what's happening. and I want to get rid of that shaft. You can see how it's circulating clockwise, so what I want to do, kind of turn it that way, and the chaff will come out. Now if you listen real closely, you're hearing that first crackle. So the temperature right now is 426. On this machine, that's the minimum threshold that can even the bean to begin to even become a coffee bean. Now you can see how it's moving quite steadily up. 331. Now this is where I determine where I'm going to go, whether I'm going to do a medium roast, a breakfast roast, or a French roast. And so I think what I'm going to do here is go for about 446, 447. Now it all depends upon the atmosphere, the temperature inside here, and a lot of variables here. Which you can smell it. It's starting to smell like coffee. Now, I've thrown that chamber in, so now I've got all the air coming out of there. And this button right here is going to set off my feeding element. You hear that speed go up on the chamber here? There we go, 447, kind of what I'm looking for. Now, I achieved that because I've been roasting for a long time, and I knew the environment here, so it hit right where I wanted to be. A 447 is a darker roast, for me anyway, and for this machine. So anyway, now we're going to cool her on down. And it's going to cool down rather quickly. You can see that temp on down. Everything now stays as put. You've got the exhaust fan going. You've got the fan on the bottom going. This button is off because that's the element button. All these others stay on. Now we're just going to cool the coffee down. continues to chill out. Now, I'm not going to turn this off until we get into like about a 169 temp. We got a ways to go, but look, it's going down quite quickly. You don't want to take it out at a high temp like this. You know, 310, that's a moderately hot oven, and it doesn't do any good to let it, you know, to take it out at this high temp. In fact, the faster you can cool this down to a room temperature, you're gonna, in a sense, settle the beans, and it'll actually be better. It'll taste better. So the quicker you can bring it down to a temperature around 160, the better the tasting of the coffee. Okay, I'm getting to the point here where I'm going to shut her down, and what I do is I'll turn off the bottom fan first, I'll pull out the screen, and then I'm going to turn off the upper fan, and I'll pull this out, and whatever chaff is left in there will go up into the hopper. So here we go. I'm shutting down the bottom fan, and now I'm going to shut down the top fan. Okay, we have coffee. Look at that. What was once a green bean now is beautiful. Now look at, there's some lighter beans in there and other stuff in there, and I'll take those out before I start to unload the chamber here. And I'll use that tin can, or that tin cup again. It's simply a latte frother pitcher is what that is. There we go, set that down. There we go, voila, beans. Now there's a couple left here. I'll toss them in the bucket. You can reuse those. There it is. I'm going to turn this fan on here and just show you what this kind of looks like here. Oh, I wish you could smell it. Okay, now the next step here is to pull out the temperature probe. I'll get a bucket. These are mayonnaise buckets or pickle buckets. Clean out really good. This is fairly good here. Never use soap in it. Just warm water and a damp cloth and just wipe them down. Soap seems to permeate in there and it'll get onto your coffee bean. So here we go. Now, I take it out scoop by scoop. One reason is this is an agricultural product. So, on the occasion that you'll see a rock, it will stand out with all this roasted bean here. So, that's why I scoop it out that way. You don't want rocks in with your beans. Now this seems kind of tedious, and you might think that there should be a scoop, but that's just something to go wrong, and you don't get to see the beans as they come out. And there it is. Coffee! Right there, look at that. Now what was 9.5 pounds is now about 8.5 pounds, maybe a little bit more. Because what you get there is the moisture comes out of the beans and they weigh less. So, that's roasting 101 on this machine.